Hey y'all, these are the notes for genetic variation with populations. We've talked about the importance of genetic variation, and if you don't have variation, then populations, when exposed to environmental changes, may not be able to survive and go extinct. So let's look at how genetic variation occurs. In most populations, individuals have different characteristics or traits. A phenotype is a trait produced by one or more genes, and a single population may have a range of phenotypes for any given trait. In order for natural selection to occur, a population must have different phenotypes to be selected for or against. In this way, a variety of phenotypes makes it more likely that certain individuals will survive different environmental pressures. In order for a population to have a variety of phenotypes, it must have genetic variation. Genetic variation comes in the form of different alleles for any given gene. A population's gene pool is the combined alleles of all the individuals in a population. Biologists measure the genetic diversity of a population by calculating the frequencies, or rates, of each allele in a gene pool. An allele frequency is therefore a measure of how common a certain allele is in the gene pool. We've touched a little bit on this about how the rise of the mammals when genetic variation, these little mammals that burrowed and had fur, they had a variation that allowed them to survive. One instance was when the comet or meteor struck Earth and caused a large dust cloud. It blocked the sunlight, lowered the temperatures. There was a mass extinction, the death of the dinosaurs, but this was great news for the mammals. They were able to survive this change. Genetic variation comes from two main sources. Mutations are random changes in DNA. Some mutations cause a new cell to form, a new allele to form. If a mutation occurs in a reproductive cell, it can be passed on to offspring. Recombination is a process in which new allele combinations can form in offspring. Most recombination occurs during meiosis, when the alleles in each parent's gametes are arranged in new ways. So the process you're seeing in this picture here is called crossing over, and we're going to learn more about that when we study meiosis. But basically, the chromosomes cross over and exchange pieces, which is denoted by the color change. And this is a brand new combination of alleles that did not exist in the population before, and that contributes to genetic variation. Some biologists are studying hybridization as another source of genetic variation. Hybridization occurs when individuals of two related but different species mate, and we'll talk more about that in the coming week. Without genetic variation, we know, especially from our pop quiz, that it can cause an entire population to become extinct, and one of the most prime examples is the potato blight that occurred in Ireland in the 1840s. All the potatoes were the same. They were clones, and a fungus came in and wiped them out. And over 1 million people died, and then 2 million people left Ireland and came to the U.S. or wherever and had to try to start a new life. The other mechanisms through which populations can evolve are gene flow, genetic drift, and sexual selection. Gene flow is the movement of alleles between populations. When individuals of one population leave that population to join a new one, they take their alleles with them. Emigration with an E is the process of leaving a population, and immigration with an I is the process of joining a new population. Gene flow between neighboring populations helps to keep their gene pool similar. However, if gene flow between such populations stops, they will become more and more genetically different. Genetic drift accounts for changes in allele frequencies that are due to random chance. Smaller populations are more affected by genetic drift because there are less alleles to balance out the effect of random changes. Due to chance alone, some alleles will likely become more common, while others will become less common and eventually disappear. Genetic drift therefore decreases genetic variation in a population. Two situations commonly cause populations to become small enough for genetic drift to occur. One of those is the bottleneck effect, in which genetic drift occurs after an event drastically reduces the size of a population, such as a natural disaster. I would recommend that you pause right here and read the example about the northern elephant seal. I'm going to go ahead and move on. The second situation is called the founder effect. This is when genetic drift occurs after a small number of individuals colonize a new area, starting a new population. Again, I would suggest that you pause and read about the Dutch settlement and the high frequency of Huntington's disease. Sexual selection occurs when traits increase mating success as a result of females being choosy about their potential mates. This drives competition among males to mate with quality females. During intrasexual selection, males fight with each other for the right to mate with a female. During intersexual selection, males display certain traits to try to impress the females. Traits that help males to win become selected for generation after generation. Over time, these traits can become highly exaggerated, such as the brightly colored feathers of the peacock, the big red bag thing under that other bird's beak, or the plume display of the birds of paradise. So that's some more additional information on where genetic variation comes from, and we'll talk more about this in class in the coming class periods.